Looking back now, I don't know if I was naive or just too in love to see the cracks forming. Maybe both. Maybe when you care about someone so much, you convince yourself that everything is perfect, even when the signs are right there in front of you, waving red flags in your face like a referee at a soccer match. But at that time, I didn't see them. Or maybe I just didn't want to. Because for me, Emily was more than just a girlfriend. She was my best friend, my partner in crime, my future. We met on our very first day of university. It was one of those random chance encounters that people love to talk about in romantic comedies. She had been struggling to balance a mountain of books in one arm while scrolling through her phone with the other. I was walking too fast, distracted by the overwhelming chaos of the first week, and before I knew it, bam, a full-speed collision in the middle of the hallway. Her books went flying, her phone clattered to the ground, and she let out a frustrated sigh before looking up at me with those sharp, intelligent eyes. I mumbled an apology, flustered, and scrambled to pick up her things. She gave me a long, assessing look, then smirked. "You could have at least bought me coffee before knocking me over," she said. That was the start of everything. From that day on, we were inseparable. We studied together, shared notes, pulled all-nighters before exams, and kept each other sane during the most stressful moments of university life. Emily had this way of making everything feel less daunting, like no matter how hard things got, we could tackle them together. She was fiercely ambitious, always aiming for the top, and I admired that about her. She pushed me to be better, to work harder, and I did the same for her. I can't even count the number of nights we spent in the library, surrounded by coffee cups and scattered papers, whispering jokes to each other between frantic studying. There were times when she would get so exhausted she could barely keep her eyes open, and I'd nudge a fresh cup of coffee toward her, watching as she gave me a tired but grateful smile before taking a sip. We had a rhythm, a routine, and to me that routine meant everything. I imagined a future where we would laugh about these days, sitting at the dinner table in our own home, telling our kids stories about how their parents survived university together. I had no doubts, none. I thought what we had was real, unshakable. We weren't just two students struggling through coursework. We were a team, a unit, partners in every sense of the word. But what I didn't realize back then was that not everyone sees relationships the same way. For me, love was about loyalty, about supporting each other through thick and thin. It was about staying up until 3 in the morning just to help her prepare for a big test, even when I had my own exams the next day. It was about believing that no matter what obstacles came our way, we would face them together. For Emily, I thought it was the same. I thought she wanted us to build something lasting, something meaningful. And for years, she made me believe that was true. But as I would later find out, in some competitions, people don't play fair. And for Emily, winning had always been more important than how she got there. The morning of our last exam, I woke up feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Pure, unfiltered excitement. This was it. The final hurdle. After today, we would be free. No more lectures, no more deadlines, no more sleepless nights buried in textbooks. We had made it. Together. I imagined us celebrating, throwing our graduation caps into the air, holding each other tight as we laughed about how insane the past 4 years had been. I imagined us stepping into the next chapter of our lives, hand in hand, ready to face whatever came next. I was so sure, so absolutely convinced that we were on the same page. But I was wrong, because by the time that day ended, I would realize that this wasn't just the end of university. It was the end of us. The morning of the exam, I woke up feeling something between excitement and nervous energy. This was it, the final stretch. The day we had both been waiting for. I rolled over in bed and grabbed my phone, half expecting a text from Emily. Something simple, maybe, "Good luck today, babe," or "We're finally done. Can't wait to celebrate." But there was nothing. That was odd. Emily was usually the one who sent the first text on important days. She was the kind of person who set reminders for every little thing. Assignments, birthdays, even our first kiss anniversary. Yes, that was a thing, but I shrugged it off. Maybe she was just focused, mentally preparing for the big day. When I finally met up with her outside the exam hall, my stomach did a weird little twist. She looked too calm. almost unnervingly so. Emily was always a bundle of nerves before exams. She'd bounce on her heels, chew on the end of her pen, mumble formulas under her breath like some kind of possessed mathematician. But that morning, she was still, perfectly composed. Too composed. "Hey," I said, nudging her arm. "You good?" She blinked, as if snapping out of a trance, and forced a small smile. "Yeah, just ready to get this over with." I studied her face. There was something off about the way she said it, like she had already moved on from today before it had even started. I should have pressed her, should have asked why she was acting so weird. But I didn't, because I trusted her, because I was a fool. We walked into the exam hall together, and I gave her a quick squeeze on the shoulder. "We got this," I whispered. She didn't respond, just nodded. The exam itself was a blur. I barely remember what questions were on the paper, or how well I did. All I remember is the gnawing feeling in my gut. The kind that told me something was wrong. Emily finished before me. I noticed her stand up, gather her things, and hand in her paper with that same unsettling ease. No hesitation, no second-guessing. She didn't even look at me as she left the room. I told myself I was overthinking it. When I finally submitted my exam and stepped outside, I expected to find her waiting for me, the way we always did after big tests. We'd exchange nervous glances, laugh about the hardest questions, and go grab coffee while talking about how maybe we didn't totally fail. But she wasn't there. I checked my phone again. No texts. We were supposed to meet up. She knew that. Something wasn't right. My first instinct was to check the usual places, the library, the campus cafe, but she wasn't in any of them. Then, almost on autopilot, my feet led me to the faculty wing. Specifically, to his office. Professor Graham. He was young, mid-30s maybe, and popular among students. Charming, always cracking jokes, the kind of professor who let students call him by his first name outside of class. But there was something about him that always rubbed me the wrong way. He had a way of looking at female students that made my skin crawl. I had joked about it once. Told Emily he seemed like the type to play favorites. She had laughed and said, "Oh, come on. He's just friendly." I wish I had trusted my gut back then. As I approached the office, I noticed the door was slightly ajar. My heart started pounding. Maybe she was just in there asking about her grade. Maybe I was being paranoid. But then I heard it. A laugh. Not just any laugh. Hers. That soft, breathy giggle that used to be reserved for our late-night talks. The inside jokes only we understood. I should have walked away. I should have knocked. But instead, I pushed the door open, and my world shattered. Emily, completely naked, sitting on his desk, her legs wrapped around him, her hands gripping his shoulders like he was the only thing keeping her grounded. And him? He wasn't even surprised to see me. He smirked. "Ah," he said, his voice unbearably casual. "You should have knocked." Couldn't move, couldn't speak. The air felt thick, suffocating. My brain refused to process what my eyes were seeing. Emily scrambled to cover herself, grabbing for her clothes with a desperation that came too late. "Wait," she blurted, her voice shaky. "I can explain." But before she could finish, Graham chuckled. "Relax, sweetheart," he said, adjusting his tie like nothing had happened. Then he looked at me, his expression smug, pleased. "You know," he mused, leaning back against his desk, "she really knows how to earn her grades. Shame she's graduating, one of my best students." That was it. Something inside me snapped. My fist connected with his face before I even realized I had moved. The crack of cartilage breaking filled the room. Blood gushed from his nose as he stumbled back, knocking over a stack of papers. "Jesus!" he gasped, clutching his face. Emily screamed. "What the hell are you doing?" I turned to her, my vision swimming. My hands were shaking, adrenaline coursing through me like wildfire. "You?" I choked out. How long?" Tears welled in her eyes. It's not. How long?" She didn't answer, but the silence told me everything. I let out a bitter, broken laugh. "All those nights," I whispered. "All those times I brought you coffee, stayed up with you, helped you study. For this? She looked away. I felt like I was going to be sick. I turned, storming out of the office, my entire body trembling with rage. But I didn't stop there. Oh no. I made sure everyone knew. By the end of the day, the entire university had heard about how Professor Graham really graded his students. About how Emily earned her perfect scores. I didn't hold back. I told the truth loudly. And as for Emily, she got her diploma with honors. But her reputation? That was something she'd never be able to wipe clean. I thought it would feel better after that. Like one of those movie moments where the betrayed protagonist exposes the truth, lands a punch on the villain's face, and then walks off into the sunset to start a new, better life. But life isn't a movie. I didn't walk off into the sunset. I walked into the nearest bar, and I sat there for hours, staring into a glass of whiskey, trying to make sense of how my life had turned into this absolute disaster. The worst part? It wasn't just the cheating. It wasn't even the fact that it had been our professor, someone we had both trusted. No, the worst part was that she didn't even try to fight for us. Not a single "I'm sorry." Not a single "I made a mistake." Nothing. Just silence. She didn't try to explain. She didn't beg for forgiveness. She just grabbed her clothes, avoided my eyes, and watched as I burned down what was left of her reputation. And I didn't stop. The rumors spread across the university faster than wildfire. Someone had even recorded part of my outburst in the professor's office and uploaded it to the student group chat. By the end of the week, everyone knew. The professor had no choice but to leave. They didn't fire him officially, of course, universities rarely do. But about 2 weeks after graduation, he suddenly decided to take a job elsewhere. And as for Emily, well, she got what she wanted. A diploma with honors. But as it turned out, an honors diploma doesn't guarantee success. Her career ended before it even began. A few months later, the last thing I heard about her was pure poetic justice. She had been so obsessed with success, so laser-focused on her career, that she had been willing to step over anyone, even me, to get what she wanted. And what did she end up with? Nothing. The top companies she had dreamed of working for? They heard about the scandal before she even stepped into her first interview. Because the world is small, especially in professional circles. One HR manager saw her name, remembered the whole professor incident, and that was it. Word spread. The best job offers disappeared before she could even touch them. She was left with second-rate positions, but even there, people knew. Isn't she that girl who, She could have been the most talented professional in the world. But people rarely remember the good. Scandals, though? They remember those forever. Even her old friends, the ones who used to admire her so much, slowly began to distance themselves. She became an outcast in her own city. And me? First, I felt broken. But then I realized something. Sometimes, losing someone is the best thing that can ever happen to you. You'd think that after everything, I'd feel victorious. Like I had won some moral battle and could finally move on with my life. But the truth is, there are no real winners when it comes to betrayal. Just survivors. For weeks after the whole incident, I found myself stuck in an endless loop of emotions. Rage, sadness, disbelief. It was like my brain couldn't accept what had happened. I kept replaying every moment of our relationship, searching for clues, for red flags I had missed. Had she been cheating all along? Was there ever a moment when she actually loved me? Or had I just been a stepping stone in her ambition-fueled climb to nowhere? I wanted to hate her. I tried to hate her. But the truth is, you can't just turn love off like a switch. What made it worse was how empty I felt. For years of my life, 4 years of support, of sacrifice, of believing in someone, gone in an instant. And she was out there, dealing with the fallout in her own way. I didn't check up on her. I didn't stalk her social media, didn't ask mutual friends about her. But the universe has a funny way of throwing information at you when you least expect it. I ran into one of our old classmates at a coffee shop about 6 months later. We weren't particularly close, but he had always been one of those people who knew everything about everyone. "Dude, have you heard about Emily?" he asked, stirring his coffee with unnecessary enthusiasm. I didn't answer, just raised an eyebrow. She's working at some tiny firm now. Apparently, no big-name company wants to touch her. Word got out about the whole professor thing, and it just stuck. He chuckled, shaking his head. Crazy, huh? She had everything lined up and then, boom, burned it all to the ground. I should have felt satisfaction. I should have smiled or at least felt some sense of justice. But instead, I just felt nothing. Because in the end, her downfall wasn't my victory. It was just another reminder of how far I had come since that day. Moving on. It wasn't easy rebuilding myself after everything. I had to learn how to be me again without her. I had spent so much time revolving around her. Her goals, her future, her dreams, that when she was gone, I felt like I had no direction of my own. But little by little, I started piecing myself back together. I threw myself into my own career, working harder than ever. Not for revenge, not to prove anything to anyone, but for myself. I started going out more, reconnecting with old friends, meeting new people, and eventually I met her. No, this isn't some fairy tale ending where I found the one right away and forgot all about Emily overnight. That's not how life works. But what I did find was someone who didn't make me feel like I had to earn her love. Someone who didn't see relationships as a transaction. She was kind, funny, and most importantly, she saw me. Not as a stepping stone, not as a convenience, but as a person worth knowing, worth caring about. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next betrayal. I was just happy. The last time I saw her, I ran into Emily one last time. It was about a year after graduation. I was at a networking event, shaking hands with people, making connections, feeling good about where I was in life. And then I saw her. She looked different. Not in the dramatic, I lost everything kind of way. But there was something in her posture, in her expression. Like the weight of the past was finally catching up to her. She saw me too. For a moment we just stood there, staring at each other. Then she walked over. "Hey," she said, her voice softer than I remembered. "Hey." She hesitated, as if searching for the right words. "I heard you're doing well." "I am." Another pause. Then, she smiled, but it wasn't the confident, self-assured smile I had once known. I wanted to say I'm sorry. I didn't expect that. Not after all this time. Not after how she had handled everything before. For a split second, I considered telling her everything I had wanted to say since that day in the professor's office. That she had destroyed us. That she had hurt me in ways she probably didn't even understand. That I had spent months trying to pull myself out of the wreckage she left behind. But instead I just nodded. "Take care, Emily." She opened her mouth, like she wanted to say more. But then she just nodded back and walked away. And that was it. No grand closure. No dramatic ending. Just two people, once so intertwined, now just strangers with a shared past. And as I watched her disappear into the crowd, I realized something. I didn't hate her anymore. I didn't love her either. I was free. And that, in the end, was all the closure I ever needed. You never really understand how much someone shaped your life until they're gone. For the longest time, Emily had been my anchor, my reference point. Everything I did, everything I planned, I always imagined us together, a team. Even after the betrayal, even after I exposed her and cut her out of my life, her presence still lingered in the background. Not because I missed her, not because I wanted her back, but because she had left a scar. And scars don't fade overnight. It took me a long time to accept that healing isn't about forgetting. It's about learning to live with the lessons pain teaches you. I won't lie and say it was an easy process. There were nights when I'd still feel that bitterness rising in my chest, that old anger trying to claw its way back. Times when I'd hear a joke that only she would have laughed at, or smell a familiar perfume in a crowded room and feel my stomach drop before I reminded myself. She's not here anymore. That part of my life is over. But eventually the weight lifted. Little by little, I stopped thinking of her. I stopped wondering if she regretted what she did. I stopped caring if she was happy or miserable. Because my life was no longer tied to hers. Redefining myself. The biggest lesson I learned from all of this Never lose yourself in someone else's dreams. I had spent so much time supporting Emily's ambitions, pushing her toward success, believing that if she succeeded, we succeeded. But I never stopped to ask myself, what did I want? For the first time in years, I was making decisions for me. I moved to a new city, got a job at a company where no one knew my past, no one knew my history with her. There were no whispered rumors, no pitying looks, just a clean slate. And it felt good. I focused on myself, physically, mentally, emotionally. I started hitting the gym, not because I wanted revenge, not because I wanted to prove anything to anyone, but because it gave me control over something when everything else had felt out of my hands. I took up hobbies I had abandoned during university, things that had once made me happy before I got lost in the whirlwind of my relationship. I reconnected with old friends, made new ones, built a life that had nothing to do with her. And somewhere along the way, without even realizing it, I became whole again. A final glimpse into her life. A few years passed before I heard anything new about Emily. I wasn't looking for updates, but sometimes life has a way of bringing things full circle. I was scrolling through LinkedIn one night when I saw her name pop up under People You May Know. For a second, I hesitated. Could have ignored it. I could have kept scrolling, let her remain a ghost from my past. But curiosity won. I clicked on her profile. Her job title wasn't anything impressive. Certainly not the high-ranking, prestigious position she had once dreamed of. She had settled for something average, something far from what she had once believed she was destined for. She had lost everything she had sacrificed us for. Her ambition, her hunger for success. It had all led her down a dead-end road. I should have felt satisfaction, but I didn't. All I felt was a quiet indifference, because I had finally reached the point where her life no longer mattered to me. I clicked off her profile and never looked back. The best revenge is moving on. They say the best revenge is success. But I don't think that's entirely true. The best revenge isn't just about thriving. It's about reaching a point where the past no longer holds power over you. It's about looking back at everything that once broke you and realizing that it doesn't define you anymore. Emily was a chapter in my life. A painful one. Sure, but just a chapter. And I had a whole book left to write. A book where I was no longer the guy who got betrayed. A book where I wasn't defined by heartbreak, but by resilience. And for the first time in a long time, I was excited to turn the page. Support the channel by subscribing. It really makes a difference.